But what happened to me in that part of my life set the whole thing for the rest of my life as far as my heart was.
You got injured, right?
Well, I was playing basketball. We were practicing at school, and I looked up and I saw my mom's preacher, because Dad had been gone for a few years at that time, and we went to a different church and found a really, really good Methodist church, and the preacher was just excellent for talking to people and helping them with whatever their problems were.
Right.
And I looked up there, and there was my brother Steve down there with the preacher, and Mom had just gone in the hospital the day before to have a procedure, what they said. And it was a doctor that was doing 5 of these procedures every day for like $5,000 a piece from insurance money. And he was getting ready to retire, and he had like 50 lawsuits against him, but they still weren't taking him, off the clock. Mother went in, she was having some stomach problems and thought she might have an ulcer. Well, he claimed that she had multiple ulcers and then did a bypass. And her pancreas failed the next day, and we went down there just in time to say goodbye to her, but she was already in a coma.
Yeah.
And so that next day after the funeral, my coach and my history teacher were there, and both of them were like the dearest, teachers in my course of that part of my life. And then we moved over to Carter Riverside and moved in with my dad and his new wife. And so from that point on, it was just like I felt it was just a survival thing. I still had a year and a half of high school to go, and so I just sunk my whole body into baseball and basketball.
Yeah, so your world is turned upside down at that point.
It was.
Did you lean on music at that point as well? Because that's your passion, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was doing stuff. Dad had some guy made a guitar, and Dad borrowed it from him, and it was like solid oak, and it was like a Telecaster. Mm-hmm. Just you couldn't hardly pick the thing up, but it fretted real good, and so I was able to learn some stuff on it, just diddling around. But I still didn't have a book or my J45 yet. But it kept me, by myself. I was, just playing with it and just trying to deal with losing my mom, because we were really close. Well,
it sounds like your best relationship might have been with the music at that point, right?
It really was.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some place to put my soul into it and disappear from all that around me.
Music is therapy, so to speak.
Oh, gosh, it was. It truly was. And like I say, I'm doing my Latin homework my senior year, and the Beatles came out, and boy, everybody went, "Ah!"
Mm-hmm.
And so we did nothing but listen to the Beatles. Then we started going out to the Starlight Club and those kind of things. And it just kept me alive. Mm. And when I went down to UT for a tryout scholarship in basketball, Darrell Royal was the athletic director and everything. I got to see him after sitting in his office for a couple of hours, and he's ready. He can see you now. And just had a few minutes talking with UT had won 4 national championships, or 3 national championships in 4 years. Mm-hmm. And Darrell Royal was the head coach and the athletic director, and they dominated.
Big shot.
Yeah, they dominated it. And I just told him what I could do. I said,
don't expect me to
my coach, Rod Bird at Richland High School, is the best defensive coach I've ever seen. Our team played full court press, man to man. We're yelling with our hand in front of their faces and everything, and there wasn't a team that could hardly beat us. And then all of a sudden, Mom passed away, and I had to go to Carter Riverside, where we had a history teacher. I was going to be a history teacher from that point in my life. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed history in school, and I figured, well, I can be a history teacher and be a coach. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of, that set up for, a future life.
Oh, when does that change?
Right after I went down to Austin.
Yeah.
As soon as I graduated, I had a duffel bag full of my clothes and my J45, and I got a ride out to I-35 He got picked up by a lime truck with a Mexican driver who spoke no English at all, and he goes, "Oh, them, you know." So I played on my J45 and sang along, and he started singing stuff, and I'd kind of follow him.
What a story!
And hitchhiked down to Austin, and he was going to Round Rock, but he took me all the way to Austin and dropped me off right on the highway out there.
Imagine the stories that guy's told.
Oh
right?
yeah, I mean, and so I went over to I was staying in a co-op, and then lined up with the coach. He said, if you want to work out on your own down here at Gregory Gymnasium, which was the old one, and he says, we have night staff down there. I'll let them know, and you can come down. I said, I'll play all night if you let me. And so I went down every night, midnight, 1 o'clock, something.
So
like
Austin's what turned music from a hobby to something a little more for you.
I broke my ankle on a skateboard 2 days before I got ready to sign the paperwork for 4 years.
Yeah.
Skateboards had just come
scholarship,
out.
Right?
Oh yeah, the skateboards had just come out, and I was working part time at a Gibson store, kind of like a little Walmart type thing. And we got an order of these things, and they had the old steel wheels.
I remember those.
They were death traps.
Yes, they were.
Here's a broken leg for you, and I got they threw a bunch of them away that even the wood was so flimsy that the screws were coming out and that kind of stuff. So they threw a few away, and I went out after work one night and got in the dumpster and grabbed a couple of the ones they threw away, and then just pulled parts and stuff until I had a pretty good solid one. And then went skating, right in front of a Scottish Rite dorm where all the women of the campus stayed in those couple of dorms. They were consolving and stuff. And I was riding down the thing, and that's going to turn on a corner, and I hit a little twig like a toothpick. It stopped on a dime. It threw me out on the street, and it's riding like that.
Nice.
I broke my left ankle.
That changed your entire evolution.
Everything. I went to they took me to the infirmary, and as I'm sitting there, they were getting ready to X-ray me. And I look up, and here comes Doc Medina, who is they called them the managers at the time, but they were the
I love that you remember names and things.
Oh
That's
gosh, I mean, because I knew as soon as they had me on the athletic list.
Yeah.
So that when anybody in the athletics came into the medical thing, anywhere off campus, anywhere in town, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're a student at UT? Call it in, And it was a Sunday afternoon, and I'm sitting there kind of waiting like this. All of a sudden, here comes this guy, and he's in Bermuda shorts like this, and he's just pissed off. And I was going, oh. And he had silver hair. He was an older Hispanic man, and that's how you could see him down the field. He'd have it on his whites, but that silver hair just
stood out.
I looked up and I went, oh my gosh, that's Doc Medina. And he came in and just felled my ankle like that.
Yep, broken.
He was at barbecuing with his family when he got the car.
That's why he's in Bermuda shorts, of course.
Yeah, he was so pissed off to have to come down there. Well, the guy didn't have a scholarship yet. And he said, yeah, you broke it.
So this changes things quite a lot for you. I want to fast forward a little bit to the early 80s. You end up back in Dallas. And you're kind of under the tutelage of Buford Jones at this point in his studio. How'd that happen? How'd you end up into that opportunity?
After I got drafted and everything, came out of the Army in 1970, January, and got to looking around and saw everywhere I went, they hardly had any kind of sound system for the bands. The bands didn't hardly carry their own stuff. So, like I say, I was shooting pool with a good friend of mine, and he brought a guy that had contact with some money. He borrowed $50,000 from the Church's Fried Chicken family.
Okay.
He was dating one of the daughters, and it turned out he was just a crook waiting to see how much cash can I get out of him, and then take a hike. And I don't know if you remember Arlen Morgan was the music store over there in Garland.
I don't.
And they had one side of the store was nothing but great grand pianists and stuff. Anytime somebody came through town and had was a piano player, they had to rent it from them, and they'd take it out to wherever they were playing.
The venue.
But on the other side, when all the rock and roll stuff started in the mid '60s, Larry Morgan, he had all the gear. I mean, you'd walk into Arlen Morgan Music Store and you'd see Neil Young over there or somebody else that was coming to, and they went down there because he had every kind of amp was made and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I went out there, and Larry Morgan, I just kind of hung out there for a day or so listening to stuff. And when I came out of the Army, while I was in the Army training, they marched us into the main area, and the guys, the NCOs, wanted a beer, so they stopped and stood us out. We'd just been marching for 4 miles. Mm-hmm. They went inside to drink, and I heard music in a little service club right across the street. I went, how the hell with this? I dropped my stuff right there, my M16 too, left it right there on the street with all the 200 guys, and went in, and there were 3 black guys, and one of them was playing an SG. And he just chunka. It's like he was holding a 9th chord and just moved it up and down and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they were playing in the midnight hour. And I went over to the guy that was running that. I said, "Can I get a guitar?" And he goes, "Nah, that guy's got the only one, but I got this." And he handed me an EBO bass. Mm-hmm. It looked just like the SG. So anyway, I mean, the room was real small, about like this. And they're over here in this corner, and I come down and sit down. Man, I said, "Hey guys, can I jam with you?" And basically it was, "Screw you, honky," mm-hmm. with an F on the front of it. And I said, "Okay." And they're playing the song, and I was sitting there going, I remember how that goes. I'd sung it for a long time. Anyway, I started playing bass on it. And that 3 minutes that I played bass right there showed me why I needed to be a bass player. Because when I started playing along with those guys, and I was listening to it and playing with it, and then I heard people yelling outside, and they were getting ready to move out. So I gave it up, went out there, and I didn't hardly sleep all night. I was sitting there going, it was my dad's left hand that got the boogie for me. That do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. When I went home, I sold some other guitars that I had, and went to Arlen Morgan Music and met Charles Kitch, who owns Sound Productions here, and sold it, and he made his way.
I was going to say, there's got to be a lesson here in dropping an M16 and picking up a bass guitar, right?
Was. I mean,
what an analogy.
The rest of my 2 years in the Army were all thinking about, gosh, I can't wait to get home because I know what I need to do now.
It's just an incredible story. I love it. Yeah.
And I got home and I went up to Arlen Morgan, and I walk in, I'm going, oh gosh, here we go. And I got to buy an amp too and everything. But as soon as I got home, I went to see The Who with Trapeze opening for them. I went to see in Fort Worth at Will Rogers, mm-hmm. Santana, In Cold Blood, and I'll think of another guitar player. And all 3 of these bands were on tour together. And all the bass players were playing the same thing. It was an acoustic 360 that had the blue panel and an 18 inverted inside of it. And I said, gosh, that's what all the big guys are playing. I better get me one of those. But I went over to and Charles, I walked in, and here's a guy with his foot up on the side thing, and he's playing a bass, and he's playing the Popeye theme. But he's playing it faster than I could sing it. And I'm going, do I really want to play bass? And he turned around, and he was a salesman. Hi, I'm Charles. What can I do for you?
I want a bass.
And we became friends like that. And he says, if you'll wait for a couple of weeks, we have a full Fender order come in. It's like 200 or 300 guitars and basses. And he says, you can come down and we'll put a special one together for you. We'll find all of it. We took 4 or 5 different basses, and I ended up with a full maple bottom with a rosewood neck on it that just fell into my hands.
Very cool.